That morning, I awoke with a sensation I hadn't encountered in years. Not quite hope, not exactly excitement, but something akin to both, a fragile stirring in the long, dormant corners of my soul. Birthdays, for me, were usually footnotes in the relentless ledger of life. Too many had been spent hunched over work emails or feigning enjoyment over half-burnt cakes. But this one felt different. Mara had been whispering about it for weeks, a clandestine murmur in the humdrum of our days. My wife, the very woman who once forgot our anniversary with an airy wave of her hand, had been strangely tender of late. Just last week, she'd even bought me a new blazer, a rich, dark fabric that felt like a promise against my skin. "It's for your big day," she'd purred, her eyes holding a secret glint. When I pressed her for meaning, she'd only offered a cryptic smile. Wait and see. My parents, too, were entangled in this peculiar web of anticipation. My mother, Teresa, whose calls were as rare as a blue moon, had phoned twice that week. Teresa didn't call without an agenda. "Don't you dare make plans for Friday evening," she'd warned, her voice laced with theatrical gravity. "We have something special planned." My father, Harold, the reigning monarch of sarcasm, had even sounded serious when he called the day before. "Skip lunch tomorrow, trust me on this one." That alone was enough to prick the balloon of my nonchalance. So I'd blocked my schedule, cleared my calendar, even declined a dinner invitation from Malik, one of my oldest confidants. "Turning 45, I'd told him, a wry amusement in my tone. "Think my family might finally be orchestrating something." He'd chuckled, a knowing glint in his voice. Well, miracles do happen, don't they? Around 4 in the afternoon, a text message from Mara illuminated my phone screen. "Dress nicely, you'll love it." A foolish grin stretched across my face, the kind a schoolboy wears when a secret crush sends a note. I chose the rooftop bar I'd always held a fondness for, Overlook Lounge, a sleek, hushed sanctuary that offered a vista of the city sprawling beneath, making one feel momentarily elevated above the petty squabbles of existence. A place where, for a few precious hours, the relentless march of the world seemed to decelerate. I arrived early. My name was indeed on the reservation list held by the maitre d', a private booth, a coveted corner view, drink service at the ready. Someone had gone to considerable effort. The hostess, with a practiced smile, led me to a beautifully set table, flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows, chilled champagne nestled in an ice bucket, personalized place cards bearing my name. I assumed my guests were simply fashionably late. No missed calls on my phone. I texted Mara, "This is incredible." Silence. No reply. So, I sat and waited. 30 minutes bled into the twilight. I opened the menu, the elegant script blurring slightly before my eyes. I didn't want to appear anxious, a solitary figure adrift in a sea of celebratory murmurings, but the waiter, with an uncanny intuition, sensed the disquiet beneath my forced composure. "Would you care to order while you wait, sir?" he inquired with polite concern. No, I'm fine, just expecting a few people," I replied, the words feeling hollow even to my own ears. An hour. A chill began to seep into me, a cold that had nothing to do with the balmy evening air. It was the insidious frost of dawning realization, the kind that snakes its way into your chest when the disparate pieces of a puzzle you desperately tried to ignore click into a devastating whole. I tried calling Mara, straight to voicemail. My mother, no answer. My father, the same echoing void. Then another message from Mara, this time a video. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Perhaps they were running late, and this was a playful prelude, a digital breadcrumb leading to their grand entrance. Maybe they were in the parking lot, about to burst through the doors with balloons and some ridiculous, heartfelt speech. No. The video began with the blinding glare of sunlight reflecting off Venetian water, the languid sway of gondolas, the carefree lilt of laughter carried on the breeze. Then, Mara appeared in the frame, a wine glass twirling in her hand, radiating an unsettling blend of joy and detachment. Behind her stood my mother, raising her own glass in a silent toast. My father, surprisingly jovial, clinked glasses with Brent, my cousin, whose presence felt like a discordant note in this supposed celebration for me. Mara turned, her smile aimed directly at the camera, a chillingly intimate gesture. "Julian," she said, her voice dripping with a false sweetness. "He's probably wondering where we are. Surprise!" A chorus of laughter erupted, sharp and brittle. "He won't mind," Mara added, tossing her hair with a practiced nonchalance that felt like a calculated insult. "He'll be fine, as always." The camera panned to the group, their glasses raised in unison. "To us, chin chin." Wide, unburdened smiles. Then the video ended. I sat in the sudden, suffocating silence. The murmur of nearby conversations, which had moments ago been a comforting backdrop, now sounded like a mocking static. The clinking of other people's glasses morphed into the shrill echo of sirens in the distance. It wasn't just that they were gone. They had orchestrated this, planned their vanishing act, choreographed their laughter on what was supposed to be my day. They hadn't forgotten. No, this was deliberate. I looked down at the meticulously set table, the untouched champagne, the empty chairs. How utterly foolish I must have appeared to the staff, to anyone who had seen me arrive in this hopeful new blazer, radiating the quiet anticipation of an honored guest. A deep breath hitched in my chest. "Don't react," I told myself. "Not here. Not now." The waiter returned, his polite smile unwavering. "Shall I open the champagne, sir?" My gaze lingered on him for too long, then I offered a curt nod. "Yes, please do." If they wanted to leave me alone on my birthday, fine. But I would not grant them the satisfaction of witnessing my public unraveling. I would drain this glass. I would occupy this table and etch every detail into the deepest recesses of my memory. Because this wasn't just a surprise. It was a declaration. They thought I wouldn't be hurt. They were wrong. But what they truly underestimated was this. I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to rage or weep or demand explanations. Instead, I was going to memorize the precise weight of this moment, the heavy chill of the glass in my hand, the searing burn of betrayal in my chest, the deafening silence of my phone. I was going to remember this table, this view, this night for the rest of my life. Because if this was their surprise, they hadn't seen mine yet. For a long, suspended moment, I simply sat, numb. The champagne was opened with a soft pop, the effervescent liquid hissing into the elegant flute. It tasted bitter, not from the grapes or the bubbles, but from the raw, unyielding ache in my chest. I stared into the glass as if the answers to this cruel riddle lay swirling within its depths. How long had they been plotting this? How many dinners had I paid for while they sat around some other table, their laughter punctuated by the anticipation of this surprise? My gaze kept drifting towards the entrance of the rooftop bar, a foolish, desperate part of me still half expecting Mara to burst in, her face alight with mischievous delight, shouting, "Just kidding!" But the longer I waited, the more profoundly foolish I felt. The waiter approached again, this time a subtle flicker of pity in his eyes. "Sir," he said softly, "would you like to cancel the rest of your reservation? We can offer a refund." "No," I interrupted sharply, the word cracking in the sterile air. "Keep it." I was still celebrating. The lie felt like ash in my mouth as I uttered it, but I said it nonetheless. Perhaps because to say anything else would have been to surrender entirely. I poured another glass, the bubbles rising like mocking whispers. My phone remained stubbornly silent. No new messages, no follow-up taunts. Just the video, still there, a digital slap waiting to be replayed. I could have left, gone home, curled into a fetal position beneath the duvet, the dull ache of betrayal my only companion. But I didn't. Instead, I angled my phone and snapped a photo of myself, a strained smile plastered on my face against the backdrop of the glittering cityscape. I even raised my glass in a mock toast. A hollow gesture, certainly, but I'd worn worse masks in my life. I uploaded it to my story with the caption, "Still worth celebrating." I don't even know why I did it. Maybe to convince myself, maybe to send a message into the void, maybe both. I took another slow sip. Time stretched, thick and viscous like syrup. At some point, I stopped checking my watch. I asked the waiter for food, even though hunger was a distant, forgotten sensation. I simply didn't want to look pathetic, a solitary figure nursing a half-empty bottle and a shattered heart. And then, a familiar voice cut through the sterile hum of the bar. "Julian? What the hell? Are you here alone?" I looked up, startled. Malik. Of all the souls who could have wandered into this particular establishment at this precise moment, it was Malik Johnson, my college roommate, once my closest confidant, the kind of friend you don't see for months but can pick up with as if no time has passed at all. He stood there in a dark green shirt and jeans, his eyes wide with concern, a gift bag clutched in one hand, his phone in the other. "Saw your story," he said, pulling up a chair opposite me, his brow furrowed. "Thought it had to be some kind of joke." "No," I murmured, attempting a weak smile that felt more like a grimace. "Looks like the joke was on me." He didn't laugh. Instead, his gaze swept over the meticulously set table, the untouched desserts, the vacant chairs. "So, where's Mara? Your parents?" "Venice," I replied flatly, the single word carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken resentments. His eyebrows shot up. "What?" I slid my phone across the table. He watched the video in silence, his mouth slowly tightening into a thin, hard line. When it ended, he placed the phone back on the table and said, his voice low and incredulous, "Those people are insane." I nodded, unable to articulate the swirling vortex of emotions within me. What was there to say? He stood abruptly. "You are not spending your birthday like this, not on my watch. I know a couple of people in this building. Give me 15 minutes. I wanted to protest, to say I didn't want pity, but the truth was, the prospect of being truly alone in that moment felt unbearable. So, I simply nodded. 15 minutes stretched into 40, and then my quiet, shame-tinged table transformed into something entirely unexpected. Malik returned with 3 friends, 2 vibrant women and a jovial guy from his office. They were loud, unapologetically cheerful, and refreshingly incurious about the precise details of my solitary state. They ordered another bottle, their laughter weaving into the music drifting from a nearby speaker. One of the women, Jasmine, insisted on taking a selfie with me. "You have killer cheekbones," she declared, her smile genuine. It was the first time I'd truly laughed all evening. More people trickled in, drawn by Malik's infectious energy. He'd posted something online, last-minute birthday bash for a real one, and tagged me. Soon, a small crowd of his work acquaintances had gathered. I didn't understand how it was happening, but the table overflowed with life. Someone ordered appetizers, then a cake appeared, adorned with flickering candles. A stranger pressed a cigar into my hand. "You look like you need this," he said with a knowing grin. And strangely, I did. The tension in my shoulders began to ease. The music seemed warmer. The food rediscovered its flavor. I found myself recounting ridiculous college anecdotes, the laughter echoing around the table. Someone raised a glass in a toast. "To the birthday legend who survived betrayal and turned it into a damn good party." I clinked glasses with faces I didn't even know, their well wishes feeling surprisingly genuine. And somewhere between the third drink and the shared plate of dessert, I felt something shift within me. The hurt didn't vanish, but it ceased to be a suffocating wall. It became a room I could stand in without gasping for air. I hadn't checked my phone in hours. When I finally did, the screen was a dizzying scroll of missed calls. First, 1 or 2 from Mira, then 10, then 15, followed by a relentless barrage from my mother, then Brent, even Harold. By midnight, there were 74. I flicked it onto airplane mode and shoved it back into my jacket pocket. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one night I hadn't been waiting for a call had become the night it wouldn't stop ringing. But I didn't answer. Not that night. Maybe never. I left the bar around 2 in the morning, Malik's arm a comforting weight across my shoulders as he walked me to the curb. "Next year," he said, his voice firm, "we're doing this right." "I'll hold you to that," I replied, a genuine smile finally breaking through the carefully constructed facade. He nodded, then added, a thoughtful glint in his eyes. "They don't deserve your silence, but they sure as hell don't deserve your voice." The words resonated, a strange comfort in their stark truth. Back home, I took off the blazer Mira had given me, the rich fabric now feeling like a mocking reminder, and hung it in the far corner of the closet, a dark sentinel amongst my other clothes. I sat on the edge of the bed and surveyed the room. Framed vacation photos, the artwork she had chosen, the scented candles I had always secretly loathed. It no longer felt like our home. I leaned back on the bed, still wearing my shoes, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't feel like a husband, a son, or a walking wallet. I felt like a man. And in the quiet stillness of that moment, I made a decision. Not for revenge, not for retaliation, but to move forward with a clarity, a silence, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Because if they thought that video was the final word on who I was, they had forgotten one crucial thing. I was still here, and I was just getting started. It's strange, isn't it? All the signs had been there, glaringly obvious as daylight, but you only truly see them when you stop pretending not to. After that night on the rooftop, I started to look back. Not just at the birthday, not just at the video, but at everything that had led up to it. And once I began to trace the timeline, the picture assembled itself with chilling speed. I had been living in a house full of whispers, but I had convinced myself it was just the wind. It had started months ago, the sudden hush when I entered a room, the hurried closing of laptops, the dimmed brightness of phone screens, the quick, strained laughter that evaporated whenever I asked what was so amusing. Mira always had an explanation ready. "Just a meme," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "Stupid group chat." I'd believed her. Or perhaps I simply hadn't wanted to argue. That's the insidious thing about love, isn't it? You keep telling yourself there's nothing behind the curtain because the alternative is too painful to contemplate. But now, the curtain had been ripped away, and the stage lay bare. Sunday dinners had become subtly uncomfortable. Not for any overt reason, but because the atmosphere had shifted, a barely perceptible change in the currents of our interactions. My mother, Teresa, would look at me with a strange, knowing smile, as if she held a secret that tickled her amusement. A smug, conspiratorial smirk that wouldn't quite fade, even when I tried to steer the conversation to safer waters. She'd make cryptic remarks like, "You'll thank us soon," or, "Trust me, this year will be full of surprises for you." I'd brushed it off, assuming they were just overly enthusiastic about the birthday plans. Perhaps they were orchestrating something genuinely thoughtful. I hadn't realized they were sharpening knives and wrapping them in festive paper. Even Brent, my cousin, whose orbit rarely extended beyond his own self-interest, had started acting as if he possessed some crucial piece of information I lacked. "Get ready to have your mind blown," he'd told me once, popping over to borrow a phone charger Mira had lent him. I'd chuckled, thinking it was a hint at a surprise family trip or some other innocuous gesture. He'd winked as he left. Not a wink of camaraderie, but the knowing gleam of someone who had watched the trap being set and couldn't wait to see me stumble into it. Tristan, Mara's brother, was another piece of the puzzle I'd blindly overlooked. He'd started taking more days off work, his absences becoming increasingly frequent. When I'd inquired if everything was all right, he'd waved away my concerns with his usual lazy charm. "Just enjoying life, man," he'd said with a careless shrug. "You should try it sometime." I later learned he'd been taking those days off to help Mira finalize travel arrangements, all conveniently paid for with my money, of course. I should have seen it. Mira had stopped asking me about finances months ago, not because she was suddenly uninterested, but because she already knew the answers. She had the passwords, she had the cards, she had the freedom. Looking back, even our bedroom had undergone a subtle transformation. There was a time when she would curl against me at night, a soft hum of contentment vibrating against my chest before sleep claimed us. Sometime in the past year, that had ceased. I hadn't even registered the gradual shift until one night I'd looked up and realized I hadn't touched her, hadn't felt her touch, in weeks, maybe longer. The warmth had simply evaporated. She'd started sleeping with her back to me, always with her phone clutched to her chest, as if it were a diary filled with secrets she couldn't bear to lose. I remember reaching out once, my hand hovering hesitantly before gently resting on the curve of her spine. She'd subtly recoiled, a barely perceptible flinch. "Long day," she'd murmured, her voice flat, and that was all. That's how it happens, isn't it? Someone slowly stops loving you. It's not an explosion, not a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet erosion. A soft, daily wearing away of affection, of connection. You don't hear it, you don't feel it at first, but one day you turn around and realize that where something substantial used to be, there's now just a hollow space, a vacancy, a missing heartbeat, a departed soul. After that devastating birthday, I began to wander through my own home like a stranger in a familiar landscape. Mara wasn't back yet, but her ghost lingered in the air, the faint scent of her perfume clinging to a throw pillow on the sofa. Her half-used hairbrush resting on the bathroom counter, her silk robe hanging limply behind the bedroom door. I would walk into rooms and still expect to hear her voice, a melodic counterpoint to the silence, but there was only the echo of my own footsteps. And then came the emails. I started to check our shared desktop computer, the one in the living room that had become a silent witness to our unraveling. She had grown careless, complacent in her deception. She hadn't cleared her browser history. She hadn't logged out of her accounts. It was there, in the digital detritus of her online life, that I saw it all. The travel itinerary, the airline tickets booked 3 weeks before my birthday, the hotel reservations in Florence, emails from a group chat with subject lines like Operation Surprise Ghost, scanned copies of passports, not mine, of course, only hers, my parents', Brent's, and Tristan's, the entire ensemble. Every single one of them had known, had planned, had agreed, and not one of them had thought to even send a normal text message, just that glib, dismissive video. I remember sitting at that desk, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hand hovered over the mouse for a long moment, my thumb twitching nervously against the edge of the desk, a nervous habit that resurfaces whenever I'm trying to contain a surge of fury. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I felt utterly drained, hollowed out. No tears came, just this dry, aching emptiness. There was also the exchange between Mara and my mother. Mara: "Do you think he'll be angry?" Teresa: "He doesn't get angry. He gets quiet, and then he moves on. Trust me." That was the sentence that finally cracked something within me. That was the moment the scales fell from my eyes, and I saw with brutal clarity what I had become to them. Not a husband, not a son, just a body, a source of funds, a background character, quiet, safe, predictable, easily mocked, easily used. They had mistaken my quiet nature for weakness, my composure for indifference. They had assumed my lack of outward drama meant a lack of inner turmoil. They thought I was weak because I didn't yell, didn't throw things, didn't slam doors, because I kept the peace, paid the bills, and stayed out of their way. They had mistaken my forbearance for passivity, my dignity for powerlessness. But they didn't understand that silence, true silence, can be the sharpest weapon of all. Especially when it belongs to someone who sees everything and says nothing until it's far too late. That night, I didn't sleep in the bedroom. I slept on the sofa, the worn cushions offering a strange sort of comfort. Not because I had been banished, but because I couldn't bear to breathe in that room any longer. Her ghost was everywhere. The laughter I was no longer privy to. The secrets whispered beneath the covers. The lies that had seeped into the very walls. I stared up at the ceiling, my eyes tracing the slow, hypnotic rotation of the fan blades, round and round. The air felt thick, stagnant, as if the entire house was holding its breath. I thought about packing a bag, leaving, disappearing just as they had. But then I thought, no. Let them come back and find me here. Let them walk into this house expecting to find the same quiet ghost, and instead find a man they never truly knew. The day after I found those emails, I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open to the banking app, scrolling through months of transactions as if I were examining a crime scene. And perhaps, in a way, I was. Because what I saw wasn't just confirmation of my suspicions, it was a brutal unveiling, a searing brand on my memory. I had been funding my own betrayal, quietly, willingly, foolishly. First, there was the $1,200 payment to an event planning company. Mara had insisted it was for a small, intimate birthday gathering for me. I remembered her saying it would be something low-key but elegant, just to remind me how loved I was. She hadn't mentioned that the company specialized in international travel arrangements, the same company that had booked the elaborate travel packages to Florence and Venice, according to their website. I stared at that transaction, and a humorless smile twisted my lips. A bitter, silent sound that echoed in the sterile quiet of the kitchen. Then, there were the airline tickets. 2 sets of round-trip flights to Rome and Florence for the same dates, booked weeks apart through the family travel account. An account that had always been in my name. It had started years ago, when I took over managing the finances after my father's early retirement. My parents had found the logistics overwhelming, and I had thought I was helping. Every time I paid their bills, booked their trips, or covered one of Brent's ill-advised college loans, they'd thanked me profusely, saying things like, "Julian, we don't know what we'd do without you." Now, I knew the truth. They could manage perfectly well without me. They just couldn't manage to exploit me without my assistance. $1,860. That was the exact amount spent in the last 10 days. Flights, hotels, a wine-tasting tour in Tuscany. And there it was, stark and undeniable in black and white. Not hidden, not disguised, just lying there in plain sight, a digital slap across the face. Mara had never asked for permission. My mother had never uttered a word of explanation. Brent, of course, had never offered a thank you. He hadn't even texted. Why would he? I was just the wallet, the machine, the quiet guy in the corner whose money solved all their little inconveniences. That evening, I walked into our bedroom and stared at Mara's vanity table. Resting on its polished surface was the necklace I had bought her for our anniversary. A delicate gold piece she had raved about in the store but had never actually worn. I picked it up, the cool metal heavy in my palm, and for a fleeting moment, I imagined handing it back to her, saying, "Here, this is the last thing you'll ever receive from me." But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened her jewelry box and pulled out a small blue folder where she kept our joint financial documents. I flipped through checks, statements, scribbled notes. One was 3 months old. A spa package for 2. Mara had told me she'd gone with a friend named Alina. But now I knew the truth. There was no Alina. There never had been. Just like there was no mysterious event planner or surprise party. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the casual, almost arrogant assumption that I wouldn't notice, as if I were too dull, too preoccupied, too forgiving. Mira used to joke that I had the soul of an accountant, organized, cautious, detached. What she didn't realize was that accountants remember everything. They remember every discrepancy, every expense, every betrayal disguised as a favor. I sat in the kitchen, the low hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the quiet house. I thought about all the things I had paid for over the years: Mira's car, Brent's down payment on his first apartment, the lavish cruise my parents had taken last summer. I had justified it all as family, as love, as support. But that's the insidious trick of it all, isn't it? The people who inflict the deepest wounds are always the ones who tell you they need you the most. I checked the credit card statements again. There it was. Another purchase, made by Mira just 5 days before their departure. A boutique in Florence. A substantial deposit. She hadn't even left the country yet, but she had already put money down on a dress she planned to collect overseas. I leaned back in my chair and slowly exhaled, the air feeling heavy in my lungs. This wasn't carelessness. This was confidence. She knew I wouldn't question it. She knew I wouldn't stop her. That was the part that stung the most. I opened my browser again, searched for the boutique. There was a picture of the storefront, nestled in a cobblestone alley, glowing with warm light and an air of quiet romance. In the window, a mannequin displayed a flowing silk dress. A soft, ethereal blue with delicate gold embroidery. Mira had described a dress like that to me once, months ago, when we were watching an old Italian film. She had whispered, "If we ever go to Florence, I would wear something like that." I remembered saying, "We should go someday." But she had gone without me, worn the dream without me, lived the life we had planned without me. And what was worse, she had used my money to pay for it. That night, I sat in the bathtub, staring at my reflection in the fogged-up mirror. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just looked, long and hard. My eyes were tired. My face was gaunt. My mouth was set in a down-turned line, even in repose. But beneath the weariness, I saw something new, a flicker of resolve. I realized something I had never been told as a child. Sometimes love blinds you not because it's bright, but because it's quiet, because it teaches you to endure instead of to question, to give instead of to protect. But I was tired of enduring, tired of giving and remaining unseen. They had written me out of their celebration. Now, I would write them out of my generosity. The next morning, I called the travel agency listed on the event planning company's invoice. I introduced myself, gave my name, and asked a simple question. "Was this charge made to my account?" The woman on the other end hesitated for a moment. "Yes," she said, "booked under the name Julian Cross. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all," I replied calmly. "Just confirmation. Thank you." Then I opened my laptop and logged into every single account. Bank, credit card, savings, travel. One by one, I began to change passwords. Block cards, remove authorized users. Quietly, surgically, like detaching leeches, careful not to leave the head behind. I opened a spreadsheet and started making a list. Every expense, every name, every act of betrayal. And then, beneath it all, I wrote one final line. No more. They had forgotten to thank me because they had never thought they would need to. Now, they would remember why they should have. After I had locked down all the accounts and changed all the passwords, I didn't say a word. Not to Mara, not to my parents, not even to Brent. Silence became my shield. And strangely, it felt like the first time I had truly been in control. When you are quiet in company, people assume you are weak. They mistake stillness for surrender, but they forget that silence listens. And I had been listening for a very long time. That morning, I made myself a cup of black coffee and stood by the window, watching the light creep across the buildings. The house was quiet. Mara hadn't returned yet, but I knew they were back in the country. My inbox was exploding. Missed calls. Voicemails, texts, Even a few emails with subject lines like, "We need to talk," or "Let's clear the air." I didn't open a single one. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, I had already heard the truth in their laughter. Instead, I posted a photo, something simple. Me on the balcony, wearing a crisp black shirt, holding a glass of scotch. The city skyline blurred in the background. The caption read, "Still celebrating, thanks to the real ones." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't offer any explanation, but within 10 minutes, the calls doubled. Mara, my mother, Brent, even Harold, who hadn't called me unprompted in years. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. They were all worried, not because I was hurt, but because I wasn't reacting the way they expected. They had prepared for hysterics, for a breakdown, for some dramatic plea to be let back into my life. But I met their frantic outreach with silence. And silence, it turns out, is terrifying when it comes from someone you thought you had safely under your thumb. Mira left 4 voicemails that morning. "Hi, please call me back. This is all getting blown way out of proportion." It was supposed to be a joke, you know, like a funny surprise. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. Then later, "Julian, please, everyone's really upset. My mom says you're being dramatic. Just call me." And finally, "You're scaring people. Brent keeps saying you're not answering anyone. This isn't like you. What are you doing?" I stared at my phone for a long time after that last one. What was I doing? I was thinking. I was observing. I was giving her the silence she seemed to crave, until she realized it meant she no longer controlled the narrative. Teresa, my mother, texted, "We just wanted to shake things up for you. You've been so distant lately. We thought a bold gesture would wake you up." I read that message 5 times. Wake me up? You thought excluding me, mocking me, laughing at my absence on my own birthday would wake me up? I left her message unread. Brent sent a voicemail. I didn't listen. This was the same man who had once sobbed to me over a broken lease, and I had bailed him out. I had co-signed when no one else would. Now, he wanted to explain. Let him keep his explanations. The most surreal part of it all was how quickly the roles had reversed. I had spent years seeking their approval, trying to be the reliable, dutiful son, the supportive husband. Now, after one quiet post and a wall of unanswered calls, I had them all scrambling. I walked through the house that day and saw everything differently in the sudden quiet. The dining table where we had shared countless meals suddenly looked too polished, too staged. The sofa where we had cuddled during movies felt cold, too perfectly arranged. The photos in the hallway, smiling faces, vacation snapshots, posed portraits, seemed like a carefully constructed fiction. It was astonishing how quickly love could rot once you finally saw the mold beneath the paint. I sat down at the desk and started to organize everything. Legal documents, account statements, passwords. I made copies, placed them in a separate folder, and locked it away. I wasn't just tidying the house. I was clearing space for clarity, for change. In the evening, a text message from Malik popped up on my screen. "Just saw your post, man. Proud of you. Let me know if you need anything." That was it. Simple, clean, real. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji and felt no need to explain. Some friends don't require backstory. They just understand the temperature of silence. Around 8:30 that evening, Mara called again. I didn't answer. She left another voicemail. "Julian, I just landed. I'm on my way home. Please don't make this ugly." That made me laugh. A short, sharp bark of amusement in the quiet room. Me making this ugly? I poured another scotch and sat in the study. I turned off the lights, wanting to sit in the stillness, to hear the pulse of the house as it used to be. Before the lies had started to accumulate like dust, before love had curdled into obligation, before trust had become a debt. I could hear the steady beat of my own heart, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't racing. I was calm. That night, I drafted a document outlining all the financial accounts I planned to restructure. Mara's name would be removed. Automatic payments for anything related to her or her family would cease. Credit cards would be canceled. Joint accounts closed. Access to investment accounts revoked. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Respect for myself. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply correcting an error I had allowed to fester for far too long. By midnight, I had a list of everything I controlled and everything I was about to reclaim. I titled the document The Reset, and the word felt powerful. They had thought silence was surrender, but they had forgotten what silence truly is. Preparation. The thing about being underestimated for so long is that people eventually forget what you're truly capable of. They start treating you like background noise, like a prop in their story, like the person who nods, pays, and stays quiet. But they always forget that the quiet ones are the most dangerous. And I had been quiet for far too long. What Mara never understood, what none of them truly grasped, was that I had stopped being just a husband years ago. I wasn't just the guy who fixed the garbage disposal or bailed Brent out of his latest financial crisis. I was the majority shareholder in the company where Mara's brother, Tristan, worked. The same company he constantly bragged about at family dinners. "We're building something big," he'd say, puffing out his chest. "The company's growing fast." Yes, it was. And I was the reason why. 3 years ago, I had quietly invested, buying up shares through a private equity firm, sitting on them, watching them grow. Then, last year, when one of the co-founders had left, I had quietly stepped in again, increasing my stake. By January, I had been quietly voted in as CEO. Tristan, perpetually living beyond his means, had no idea. He thought I was just some unassuming investor his boss happened to like. He never knew it was my signature on his bonus approvals, his vacation requests, his promotions. So, imagine my expression when an internal HR notification landed in my inbox. Tristan Grady. Unauthorized leave. 7 consecutive days without prior approval. I clicked on the attached report. Sure enough, he had told HR he was taking short-term medical leave. But the photos he was plastering all over his public social media told a very different story. Sipping cocktails in Florence. Shirtless selfies on yachts. Hashtags like "living my best life" and "family first." The audacity. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Probably assumed no one would notice. I could have reported it immediately, sent it straight to the disciplinary committee, but I didn't. Not yet. I saved the report, printed it, and placed it in the growing folder. The folder that already contained records of Mara's recent spending, the freeze on the joint accounts, and the ever-expanding list of everything I had uncovered since that disastrous birthday night. I wasn't ready to strike. I wanted them to feel safe for just a little longer. The next day, I went into the office, took my usual seat in my corner office on the executive floor, the glass-walled space no one ever really thought belonged to me. I greeted everyone politely, didn't mention Tristan's name once. Let him think everything was business as usual. Let the whole world continue to think I was just the tired husband who had been forgotten on his birthday. Let them all sip their espressos and pretend the ground wasn't shifting beneath their feet. I wasn't just taking back my money, I was reclaiming my presence. You see, I hadn't just built wealth. I had built influence, connections, authority. The kind of quiet power Mara had never suspected I possessed. Because I hadn't talked about it over dinner while she'd boasted about designer handbags and carefully curated Instagram stories. I had been building quiet partnerships and accruing capital while she'd laughed with her friends about how boring I was. I sat across from the decision-makers who had danced to the tune of her ostentatious lifestyle. One of them, Raymond, a seasoned member of the board, caught my eye. He pulled me aside in the elevator, his gaze shrewd. "So, I hear your relatives have been causing quite a stir overseas." I raised an eyebrow, feigning ignorance. "Oh? Well, let's just say some people forget who signs their checks," he replied, a knowing pat on my shoulder. I offered no response. None was needed. By lunchtime, I had quietly submitted the paperwork to freeze all pending bonuses in Tristan's division. HR would handle the rest, methodical, respectful, but firm. The official notification would land in his inbox in 2 days. Nothing flashy. Just enough to make him feel the first tremor of the ground shifting beneath his entitled feet. I returned home that evening to find Mara in the kitchen. She was back early, dressed in that ethereal blue silk dress. The one she had spoken of with such longing, the one she dreamed of buying if she ever went to Florence. She wore it like a trophy, like a symbol of her escapade. I watched her standing there, stirring pasta as if nothing had transpired. She offered a saccharine smile over her shoulder. Thought we could eat and talk. I said nothing, simply placed my briefcase down and walked past her into the living room. She followed, drying her hands on a dish towel. Julian, I know you're upset, but this was supposed to be fun. You've been so distant lately, and I thought maybe a reset would help. I turned to face her, my composure a stark contrast to the turmoil she feigned. Calm, clear. You planned a vacation and deliberately excluded me from it. That's not how it was, she said quickly, her tone defensive. It was spontaneous. No, I countered, my voice flat. It was orchestrated. You used my accounts. You used my name. You booked in advance. You lied. Her smile faltered, then vanished entirely. She straightened, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. So what now? Are you going to punish me? I tilted my head, a gesture of cold consideration. No, I'm going to free myself from you. She blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness of my words. What does that even mean? It means, I said slowly, each word measured, I am no longer going to pour myself into people who see me as a wallet or a background character or someone who doesn't get angry. She crossed her arms over her chest, her posture rigid. Don't be dramatic. A small, weary smile touched my lips. You called me dramatic after you stole my birthday and labeled it a surprise. She tried again, her voice softening, laced with a false concern. Julian, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Just tell me what you want. I can fix this. No, I said, my voice firm, unwavering. You can't, because this isn't broken. It's exposed. Her expression shifted, a sliver of fear finally creeping into her eyes. She understood, on some fundamental level, that something irrevocable had changed. I picked up the folder I had placed on the table earlier. Tristan will be hearing from HR soon. Just a heads up. Tell him to prepare. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. I already have. She took a step forward, her voice pleading now. Julian, please. That's my brother. And you were my wife, I replied, the past tense hanging heavy in the air. At least, you were. I left her standing there, a statue of bewildered disbelief. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't need to, because the most important lesson I had learned was this. I didn't need to elevate my voice to elevate my worth. 3 days after the video, 3 days after the rooftop dinner I had spent alone, 3 days after I had frozen the accounts, documented every betrayal, and fallen into a profound silence. That's when they returned. I had just walked in from the office, my coat still on, keys in hand, when I heard the familiar sounds in the hallway. Laughter, footsteps I knew by heart, the rolling of suitcases, the click of Mara's high heels on the hardwood floor, as if nothing had happened. My heart didn't quicken. I didn't panic. I simply stood in the middle of the living room and waited. The door swung open with its usual casualness. Mara entered first, pushing it open with her hip, sunglasses still perched on her head, a familiar designer shopping bag swinging from her wrist. Behind her came Teresa, holding a small pastry box from that expensive bakery she favored. Then my father, Harold, strolled in, wearing the same beige polo shirt, and that smug expression he always wore after a trip. Brent trailed behind, his usual half-smirk playing on his lips, as if he were the star of some movie playing out in his head. They all walked in as if nothing was amiss, as if I hadn't watched a video of them laughing at my expense from the other side of the world. Mara spoke first, her voice bright and falsely cheerful. "Julian, good, you're home." She moved to kiss my cheek, a practiced gesture of intimacy. I took a small step back. She blinked, but said nothing. Teresa placed the pastry box on the table, a peace offering of sugary indulgence. "We brought cannolis," she announced, as if a dessert could erase betrayal. Harold chuckled and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't be a sore loser, son. It was just a bit of fun." I looked at them one by one. My eyes held no fire. My hands didn't tremble. I was too far beyond shock to feel any immediate emotion. I was in that space beyond hurt where clarity rises, where truth hits with such force it knocks out all sentiment and replaces it with purpose. "Julian," Mara said again, her voice softer now, a hint of uncertainty creeping in. "We wanted to surprise you. We thought it would be funny, you know. Turn the tables. Show you that you don't always have to plan everything." She offered a strained smile as if presenting me with a gift. "We even made a video. You saw it, right?" I nodded once. I saw it. Teresa spoke next, her tone placating. "You've been so withdrawn lately, so we thought a bold gesture would snap you out of it. We didn't think you'd take it so badly. You're not usually this sensitive." Harold chimed in, his voice dismissive. "Let's not make a big deal out of this. It was a weekend, a little trip. We're back now, aren't we?" I didn't move. "You left me alone on my birthday," I said quietly, the words hanging in the air like a cold accusation. "You lied. You laughed about it. You used my money to do it." Brent shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, man, don't make this weird." I turned to Mara. "How long were you planning this?" She hesitated. "A few weeks?" 3 months, I corrected, holding up my phone. "I saw the booking confirmations, the emails, the charges." Her face fell. Teresa now looked flustered. "You went through her things?" she asked, as if I were the one who had committed an offense. "I managed the accounts," I stated. "All of them. The only reason you flew business class to Venice was because I paid for it. You didn't even try to hide it." Harold scoffed. "You're acting like a victim." "No," I said, taking a step forward. "I'm acting like someone who finally woke up." Silence descended upon the room, heavy and suffocating. Mara took another tentative step forward, carefully placing the designer bag on the table. "Julian, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. We're your family." "No," I said again, the word a quiet but firm declaration. "You are people I gave too much of myself to, and you took advantage of it. All of you." Teresa sank slowly onto the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You're being too emotional." "No," I said, my voice even. "I'm being perfectly clear." I picked up the folder I had placed on the console table that morning. Inside were printouts, account closure notifications, blocked cards, legal documents. I slid it across the coffee table. "What's this?" Mara asked, picking it up with trembling fingers. "Your access to our accounts has been revoked," I stated. "All of them. You'll need your own cards, your own plan, your own money." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Brent snatched one of the pages. "What's this about Tristan?" "He took unauthorized leave from work," I said. "Company policy requires consequences, and since I now oversee executive decisions, his promotion is on hold." Teresa's jaw dropped. "You wouldn't." "I already have." Harold stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You're making enemies in your own home." "No," I said. "You are in my home, and you have treated me like a stranger for far too many years." Mira's voice trembled. "Julian, what are you saying?" I'm saying you wrote me out of the one day that was supposed to mean something. You stood in a video and said I wouldn't be hurt, that I'd be fine, as if I were just a fixture, a backdrop, some fool who pays for your vacations and asks no questions. She tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm not asking for explanations. I don't want to hear why it was a joke or how I'm too quiet. This isn't about being dramatic. This is about being done. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken accusations and dawning realizations. No one touched the cannolis. Mara stared down at the folder, then back at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You can't just cut me off like this. I can, I said, and I have. She took a step closer, her voice now lower, pleading. Julian, we've been together for 10 years. I know exactly how long it's been, I interrupted. Every day, every dollar, every lie. Teresa stood up, her hands clenched at her sides. You're turning your back on your family. No, I said softly. You turned your backs first, and now you're just shocked that I'm not pretending everything is all right. I stepped aside, gesturing towards the door. Take your bags. Take your pastry box. Go home. Tears welled in Mara's eyes. This is our home. Was. Now it's just the place where I finally woke up. They stood there for another frozen moment, then Mara slowly picked up her purse. Brent grabbed a suitcase. Teresa said nothing. Harold muttered something under his breath that I didn't bother to decipher. And then, one by one, they walked out. I didn't slam the door behind them. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply locked it. And finally, I exhaled. Later that night, the silence in the house was loud but not empty. It felt earned, the kind of quiet that settles in after you finally stop explaining yourself to people who were never truly listening. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel sad. I felt awake for the first time in years. I felt like I had reclaimed something I hadn't even realized I had lost. My voice. I walked into the living room and sat down at the desk again. My laptop was still open. So was Mara's email. She hadn't even bothered to log out of the shared computer. I hadn't planned on digging any deeper, but a whisper of curiosity nudged me. Really? That quiet inner voice asked. What else did they say when they thought you'd never know? Slowly I scrolled through her inbox. At first, nothing remarkable. Store promotions, travel confirmations, a forwarded meme from her friend Lydia. Then I saw it. An old email chain titled Operation Surprise Ghost. I had seen the subject line before, but hadn't opened every message within the thread. This time I did. There it was. A message from Brent. Tamira, it's Brent. I still can't believe he hasn't caught on. How dense does someone have to be to not notice their wife planning a birthday trip with everyone but them? LOL. I read it twice, then continued scrolling. Mira, Julian doesn't pay attention to that stuff. He's too soft, honestly. He'll probably say thank you when he sees the video. That's just him. Brennan, perfect mark. Mara, exactly, Saul. Saul and I talk about it all the time. He really thinks we're doing something nice for him, lol. Sewell. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a frantic heartbeat. Who the hell was Sewell? It didn't take long to piece it together. A few more clicks, and I found a separate email chain between Mira and someone named Saul Glassman. They had been using a different thread entirely. Most of it was innocuous at first. Jokes, articles, video links. Then came the attachments, photos, screenshots. Mara in Italy, Mara on a balcony I didn't recognize, Mara with a wine glass, leaning into a man I had never seen before. There was one photo of them both in bathrobes in a hotel room. The timestamp was the night of my birthday. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look away. I kept reading. Saul. He really still doesn't know? Damn, that's wild. Mira. He has no clue. Julian is the kind of guy who'd only notice a fire after the whole house burned down. Saul. Lucky for us. Mira. Unlucky for him. I leaned back in my chair, every muscle in my body suddenly rigid. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just infidelity. This was entertainment. Mockery. They thought they were clever. They thought I was a fool, lost in spreadsheets and grocery runs. They had been so confident in their little game that they had left all the pieces lying in plain sight. I opened another tab and typed out an email to my lawyer, Adrienne. We had worked together for years through my company, reliable, efficient. She handled major contracts and disputes without batting an eye. I didn't tell her everything, just a brief message. Please prepare a full divorce strategy, personal and financial. I need a consultation by the end of the week. After that, I closed the laptop. I didn't need to read anymore. I had seen enough. Every confirmation I hadn't even known I needed was now a quiet flame, steadily consuming the old version of my life. But I didn't feel rage. That was the surprising part. I thought I would be furious. I thought I would break something. But instead, I felt something entirely different. Relief. Relief that I hadn't imagined it, that the tension in our house hadn't been my paranoia, that I hadn't been going crazy, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the gaslighting. It's the way they make you feel guilty for asking questions, for noticing, for caring. And once you know the truth, that entire weight lifts, like shedding old armor. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I put on music, something quiet and instrumental, and opened the windows to let the sunlight stream in. Mira hadn't returned. I assumed she was staying with her mother, or maybe even with Sol. I didn't care. I turned off the shared location tracking, removed backup access to all accounts, sent the paperwork to close the joint investment fund, blocked her number. I didn't need to yell at her. I didn't need to confront her. The silence said everything I needed it to say. Later that day, I went to the bank and met with my personal advisor. We transferred half of the liquid assets into a new account solely in my name. I rewrote my will. I signed a temporary freeze on any withdrawal requests from the old trust fund Mara had partial access to. I even updated the beneficiaries. Everything now went through a foundation I had quietly established in my grandmother's name. I told no one, not even Malik. By evening, I was back on my balcony. Water this time, no scotch. The city glittered below, serene and indifferent. And for the first time in weeks, I felt no anxiety, no anticipation of a ringing phone or a turning doorknob. Just presence. Around 7:45 p.m., an unfamiliar number flashed on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text arrived. Mara, did you freeze the trust? Julian, what are you doing? You're ruining everything. I stared at the screen and smiled to myself. Not a wide, triumphant grin, just a small, knowing upturn of my lips. I typed out a reply, considered it, then deleted it. Instead, I responded with 2 words. No more. Another call. Ignored. Then my mother called. Then Brent. The messages kept coming. All of them frantic, panicked, confused. Teresa, why is my credit card being declined? Brent, call me right now. Mara, I need to talk to you. Please, you're taking this too far. They hadn't expected me to find out. They hadn't expected me to push back. And they certainly hadn't expected me to do it without raising my voice. But they should have known. I was never a fool. I was just patient. And now, they were about to learn what happens when patience finally runs out. It was a Friday morning when Mira finally appeared at my office. Honestly, I had expected it. I thought she would have come sooner, but it didn't surprise me that it had taken her this long. Mira was always bold when she felt empowered, but hesitant when the tables turned. I had just finished a meeting about a real estate investment with Malik when my assistant buzzed me. Mr. Cross, you have a visitor. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Send her in, I said, slowly standing and straightening my jacket. I wanted to be completely composed. Not because I needed to impress her, but because I refused to show her even a hint of the man she thought she could manipulate. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the vibrant version of herself I had seen in those Italian photos. No designer coat, no freshly coiffed hair, just tired eyes, hair pulled back too tightly, a cheap blouse she had likely thrown on in a hurry. But the most striking thing was the raw panic etched on her face, a frantic energy barely concealed beneath a thin veneer of forced composure. "Julian," she breathed, closing the door behind her. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "You're speaking." "Continue." She sat down slowly, her gaze darting around the office, taking in the familiar surroundings as if they were suddenly alien. "I don't even know where to begin. Everything is falling apart." I remained silent. No nod of encouragement. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own words, unbuffered by my usual placating responses. She swallowed hard. "My accounts aren't working. The trust fund access is blocked. Brent got evicted yesterday. My mom and dad were denied their mortgage refinancing. They said the joint guarantee was removed. What is happening?" "You're describing the consequences of your choices," I said calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "Julian, please. I didn't want things to go this far. That video, it wasn't meant to hurt you. We just wanted to play a joke. Just lighten you up." I raised a single eyebrow, a silent challenge to her flimsy explanation. "You said it wouldn't hurt me. You said I was soft, that I wouldn't do anything, that I wouldn't even notice." Her face twisted with a mixture of guilt and resentment. "You read my emails?" "I read what was left in plain sight," I corrected. "You weren't exactly subtle. You just assumed I wouldn't look." She let out a sharp, frustrated breath. "Okay, fine. Yes, I said some things I shouldn't have, but that doesn't mean you have to destroy our lives." "I'm not destroying your life," I countered, my voice still level. "I'm ceasing to fund the one you built on top of mine." She looked as if I had slapped her. "Julian, we're married. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I leaned forward slightly, my gaze unwavering. "It meant everything to me. Until the day you went to Italy with my parents, laughed at me on camera, cheated on me with another man, and used my money to finance the whole charade. Now, you don't get to talk about meaning." She fell silent for a moment, then her voice dropped, almost desperate. "Tell me what I can do. Just tell me. I'll fix this. I'll do anything." I stood up and walked over to the window, my hands tucked into my pockets. "You know what hurts the most?" I said, my back to her. "Not that you forgot my birthday, but that you remembered it and still chose to make me feel invisible. That's not forgetfulness. That's cruelty." I heard her sniffle behind me. "I didn't think it would affect you this much." I turned slowly to face her. "That's the problem, Mara. You never thought it would affect me at all. You never thought I'd notice. You never thought I'd leave. You thought I'd just keep giving, keep paying, keep forgiving." Her voice broke. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I nodded once. "Yes, you were." Silence descended between us again, thick and heavy as a shroud. She stood up too, now walking towards me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't want to lose you." I looked at her for a long moment before replying. "You already did. You just didn't realize it until the money ran out." Her gaze fell to the floor, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She had no more leverage. Then I said the words that sealed it. "I invited you to celebrate the most important day of my life, and you replied from Rome." That broke her. She sank back into the chair, covering her face with her hands, silent sobs shaking her frame. Not loud, not theatrical, but the way people cry when they finally understand that something is truly over. I didn't flinch. I didn't offer comfort. I simply stood still and watched the last vestiges of the woman I had once loved dissolve before my eyes. A knock on the door. My assistant peeked in. "Mr. Cross, your noon appointment has arrived." I nodded. Mira slowly stood, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, just one more chance." I opened the door wider and gestured towards it. "Your time is up." She hesitated for a moment, then walked past me into the hallway. Before she left, she turned back and looked at me one last time, a flicker of something akin to regret in her eyes. "You used to be so kind." "I still am," I said. "That's why I'm not dragging this out." The door clicked shut behind her. That night, I posted one last photo on social media. It was a picture of Malik and me standing in front of the new building we were launching. Sleek, modern office space, all glass and quiet confidence. The caption read, "Growth suits me." The likes poured in, so did the comments. But none of it mattered. What mattered was the message and who it reached. The next morning, Mara's mother called me 5 times. I didn't answer. Brent sent me a lengthy apology that ended with a request for a loan. I archived it without reading. Teresa texted, "We didn't realize how serious you were." I deleted it. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. They had forgotten my birthday, so now I would forget them. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with the one thing they had never expected: peace. 6 months later, I live in a city where no one calls me quiet anymore. No one greets me with a knowing smirk that hides pity. No one expects me to foot the bill while they laugh behind my back. I traded the old house, the old life, and everything that came with it for something cleaner, something mine. I wake up to peace now, and I don't mean silence. I mean peace, the kind that sits in your chest like a steady heartbeat, not a ticking bomb. I moved out of the house 2 months after Mara walked out of my office. Sold it to a young couple who smiled with the naive optimism of those who haven't yet learned how cruel people can be. I packed my belongings 1 box at a time, slowly, deliberately. I left the furniture Mara had chosen, the paintings her mother had admired, even the rug Teresa had once deemed tasteful for someone so quiet. I didn't need any of it. I took my books, a few changes of clothes, and my grandmother's old piano. That was enough. I bought a loft in a small town by the water. High ceilings, clean walls, big windows, quiet neighbors, a place where you can hear your own thoughts and actually want to listen to them. Malik helped with the move. He even showed up with a toolbox and a bottle of bourbon. "This is who you always were," he said, surveying the empty space. "You just needed the noise to stop to hear it." He was right. I started a new project, something small, something personal. A foundation in my grandmother's name. She was the only one who had ever truly seen me. She raised me part-time while my parents were busy showcasing themselves. She used to say, "Julian, some people love what you do. Others only love what they can take from you. Learn the difference." I hadn't understood then. I did now. The foundation provides small business grants to men starting over. Divorced, displaced, overlooked. Not because I'm bitter, but because I know what it's like to feel erased. To be told you don't matter until your silence becomes inconvenient. We've helped 12 men so far. One of them, a teacher named Desmond, cried when I handed him the check. "You don't even know me," he said. I smiled. "I know enough," I replied. "I know what it's like to lose everything and realize you were never truly seen. Now, I've built a life where I don't need permission to matter. My calendar is mine. My energy is mine. My money, my kindness, my time, all mine, non-negotiable, guilt-free. I have dinner with people who listen when I speak. I walk into rooms where I don't have to shrink. I look in mirrors that don't reflect someone else's disappointment. I live. Every now and then, I still get a ripple from the past. Teresa sends emails with subject lines like, "Are you still upset?" or "We didn't mean to hurt you." I never open them. Brent texted me last week. "Heard you're doing well. Proud of you, man." I didn't reply. Proud of me after calling me a perfect mark? Please. And Mira, well, she tried everything. First, the emails, then the voicemails, then a letter delivered by courier. I never opened that either. She even showed up at the foundation once, hoping for a conversation, but I didn't let her in. My assistant met her at the door and said, "Mr. Cross is unavailable today," which was true. I was unavailable. Not for her. Not anymore. People don't understand that healing isn't always loud. It's not a grand speech or a slammed door. Sometimes it's just a quiet exit and never looking back. That's what I did. And that's why I finally won. A few weeks ago, I celebrated my birthday. 46. Malik threw a barbecue on the rooftop of our new building. No fanfare, no speeches, just laughter. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't leave a bitter taste in your mouth. People came who didn't need anything from me. They brought food, drinks, stories. One guy brought his kid. Another brought a cake shaped like a giant eraser. He said, "For the man they tried to rub out but couldn't." We laughed for 10 minutes straight. That night, I stood alone for a moment, looking out at the city lights. I thought about last year, the video, the voices, the smug smiles. I thought about the version of myself who had sat alone in that rooftop bar, fighting back tears, a glass of champagne clutched in his hand. And then I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I had survived. Because I had rebuilt without bitterness. Because I had remembered who I was before they taught me to doubt it. I am Julian Cross. I am not a background. I am not a wallet. I am not the man they forgot. I am the man they thought wouldn't rise. But I did, and I continue to rise with every day, and every choice, and every breath I take without their permission. This is my life now. Not perfect, not polished, but real. And most importantly, finally mine.